So I'll do a brief introduction to myself because I've spoken to a few of you on the way in, but my name is Natalie Furness. My specialty is in healthcare and systems and analytics, and also in marketing and communications. So I've worked in the blockchain industry now for about coming up towards 2 years. So how many donkey years is that?
20?
20. I have been 20 donkey years in the blockchain industry. So I like to come up here and ask our panel questions. Some easy, some not so easy. So I'm going to ask just 3 questions that have come from people that have attended events previously, or what they'd like our panel to answer, and then I'm going to hand it out to the audience, so you have your opportunity to ask the questions you want to ask. So my first question to all of the panelists is, you are all at the forefront of emerging technologies. We've had lots of talk today about different types of technology, programming, blockchain, but what I'm interested in is which markets are you watching? Which sort of industries do you think there's going to be the biggest changes to related to emerging technologies? So I think I'll come to the end to start with. Oh, have you got? Yeah.
So, sorry.
Sorry, do you want to introduce yourself? Pardon?
What was the first part of the question?
So, everybody's at the forefront of emerging technologies.
Yeah.
Which industries do you think are going to have the biggest impact to them with innovation and technology?
Got it, okay. So I'm Tina Baker-Taylor, not related to Simon Taylor, but he is the co-founder of the Members Association that I run, which is called Global Digital Finance. It's an industry initiative that advocates for regulatory and governance frameworks. We have a code of conduct for the crypto asset and blockchain industry that's written by the market participants of that industry, and we work with global policymakers. So I'm obviously very pro-crypto, although I think we're probably going to see the most growth in probably the machine learning AI space. And I know people throw that around quite a lot, but I don't think we appreciate how much it's already impacting our lives and changing what we think and how we interact with each other and what we buy. So I'm going to go with AI.
So obviously coming from an energy background, I have my eye on that. I think that there's a lot to be done in terms of optimizing the energy sector, particularly with decentralized systems. So if you think about offshore wind farms, for instance, they're intermittent, which means sometimes the wind blows, sometimes it doesn't. We have to better connect that with battery storage and also match that up better with the demand side so that consumers can control better the energy that they're using.
Yeah, so I guess for me, mine's to do with financial systems. So I've got 50 to 60 donkey years in cryptocurrencies. So I guess one question before I start, I'm going to ask you all the question. Who heard of Bitcoin back in 2013? Who bought Bitcoin back in 2013, I guess? There you go, some people did.
They're the rich people.
They're the rich people, yeah. They're buying the drinks afterwards. No, but when I started looking at Bitcoin, what got me really excited was the idea that we could have this global currency that ideally anybody could use that was out of reach of censorship or any single point of failure. So far, Bitcoin's failed to do that for us. So my research now looks at how do we actually achieve that? You know, can we build a global currency anyone can really use that can scale and achieve 5,000 transactions per second? And I guess the main benefit there is what we're really seeking, I think, is that we just want accountability. You know, the problem with the banking system today is that it's not accountable. There's no transparency. We can't see what's really going on. We trust auditors to do that job for us. Where the blockchain, at the heart of it, is just a cryptographic audit log. Given a blockchain, anyone here can recompute the same database as everyone else. So by having that single power, you can hold anyone accountable. Whoever maintains the blockchain, you can now hold them accountable. So for me, in terms of emerging markets, my dream in 5-10 years' time is that we'll have this global payment network that's out of reach of the banking system that we all run ourselves at home. And that's really exciting.
Okay, so we have AI, we have energy, we have financial technologies. God, that's hard. I like to look at all of those fields because I think that one way or another they all will be transformed. It's just like, you know, it's the waterfalls, the river flows and all that, so it'll all get changed. I think that what I like about blockchain is that for the first time really in quite a while, this technology is built by the first world but benefits the whole world. So what I mean by this is that when we take machine learning, when we take databases, programming languages, even internet really, it's kind of, you know, a bunch of very smart people, very well educated, hopefully very well paid, designing a thing and creating a thing, and then another bunch of fairly well educated and fairly wealthy people using it. Guess who does not need a smart fridge? A guy in India who struggles to actually have any food. With blockchain, that changes slightly because now with sustainable supply chain, certificate or provable provenance of food, we are able to actually pay the farmer that produce your coffee grains. And there are, I'm not kind of, you know, imagining this, there are projects like that where you can actually buy a bag of coffee and know that that bag of coffee comes from Frank, and Frank has 3 kids and works on this farm. And you can actually know that by buying that bag of coffee, you're feeding his children. I think this is something that for me is really important and I'm very passionate about. I'm not sure if this is the kind of what will bring money, but it will definitely make me wake up in the morning.
Thank you. That was great from everybody. Actually, a lot of you covered almost what I was going to ask in my second question. So I think I'll skip straight to the third and hand it out to the audience after that. So, from your experiences of working in emerging technologies, I think Holly's given us quite a good overview of what advice she would give to any women that want to enter the sector. Marta, how about you? What do you think?
I think that there is an interesting kind of shift in how we're looking at things. So I was just today writing an article for some newspaper and realized that when we were like first, second, third industrial revolutions, they were all moving towards higher specialization, right? So we were more and more alienated in our industry, and we came from, you know, general builder to a person who actually just knows how to build a house and not a skyscraper, and then actually not only just build the house but just put up the walls, and then a second person who fits the windows and a third person who does that. So we are getting more and more specialized in what we do. Now if you look at what is happening today, we throw around things like AI, like machine learning, autonomous driving, neural networks, but also legal implications, moral implications, philosophy. So we are kind of coming back to the phase of Renaissance, and the Renaissance, Leonardo da Vinci's Renaissance human who has to know all of those bits. Today, computer science degrees require their students like Stanford to take very advanced moral and ethics classes because you need to understand the consequences. So I think the one thing that I would take away from it is learn very broadly. Don't dive into one hole, but just go to all sort of events, try all sort of things and do what you're passionate about, because it will become increasingly easier to combine those passions, and it will benefit you because you'll be more versatile in the market and more agile.
Awesome. I'm going to give 2 pieces of advice, I think. So, who here wants to become a programmer, or who is a programmer already? You know, raise your hand if you'd like to do some coding. I think the biggest thing about wanting to be a programmer is not to get scared that it's too complicated. What you'll learn is that at the very heart of programming, there's only 2 things you can do. If this is true, do this. If this is not true, do that. And a for loop. You know, do this 10 times. And from those 2 basic primitives, you can build anything you want. It becomes an art after that. You know, how do you put these together to build these global systems? So that's really exciting. Then the second one is to attend boot camps. So as Holly mentioned during her talk, so this time last year, Antonio reached out to me and he said, Patrick, do you want to help with these work on blockchain workshops? It's a weekend boot camp where We get a group of people come in and we teach them how blockchain works, how Bitcoin works, Ethereum work. From a computer science perspective, they do hands-on coding. When I started there with them in the first weekend, I think they were charging like £400 per person. And when I spoke to Antonio about this, what we discovered was that it was a charge for a workshop, and they had 350 people attend in the past year or two, and 9 of them are women. That's a terrible statistic. So we decided to make the workshop free for women. And within the next month, we had 20 developers come. 20 female developers showed up and they got their hands dirty. And then what we decided after that was just to make it free altogether. So I think for the past 10 months, it's just been free for every session. So you're more than welcome to come to that. We volunteer our time so we can help build up our developer community here. And we heavily encourage women to attend because we need more women developers. Maybe like developers need women developers.
Mm-hmm. And that's why we celebrate the men.
Can I just add something? There are so many libraries, there's so much ready-made code already out there that people can use. You don't always need to start from scratch. And this is coming from someone who didn't even know what to download in order to get started coding. It's not as hard as you would think, trust me.
Thank you. And Tina?
I think I would go back to the beginning in trying to really know yourself and what you enjoy. So, prior to specifically being in blockchain and crypto, I was, in the fintech fray in a financial institution, and I see a lot of younger women that want to be in fintech, and there's something around that sounds like cool, I'm in fintech. And I always say, but what do you do? So are you in business development? Are you in, client onboarding? Are you in sales? So the industry is one thing, and you could be attracted to an industry, and that's great, but what do you really want to do? And what are you good at? What do you naturally, what's your natural affinity? So, people say to me, oh, you talk about these events, do you like that? And I do, but if you don't, then, maybe a role where you're required to do that, to pitch to people or to sell to people, might not be for you, but there might be something else that you're brilliant at and you really enjoy. So I would recommend that you're less focused on what's the right job for me or what industry do I want to work in, but what makes your heart sing? What are you happy doing? If you're a really organized person, if your closet at home is, or your kitchen, all your spices are alphabetized, you're probably, quite an organized, analytical individual, and you're going to probably thrive in an environment where you might be able to work a little bit more autonomously. If you're super creative and you're gonna, you've got 17 people at your house every night because you like to be surrounded by people, maybe sales is for you. So I would encourage you to kind of get to know yourself, because you'll be happier in the long run, whatever industry, whatever you do, if you're doing something that's naturally matches your personality.
Thank you. So, we finished in good time, so we are going to throw this out to the audience. Now, we only have 2 mics, so I'm actually going to go into the audience, so you can ask our lovely panel questions. So, we've got about 20 minutes now for question time, so hands up, who's got a question?
Run, Natalie, run!
Please, can you introduce your full name and maybe one line about yourself and the question?
Hi, I'm Monica. I'm Monica Nguyen. I'm a broker in cryptocurrencies. I joined the industry back in September, so I feel like I'm always constantly learning. And being here and listening to you guys, I feel really inspired. Thank you. This question is for Patrick McCrory. Do you think it will become cryptocurrencies, do you think it will become an acceptable payment method for the public? And what do we need to get there, and how do we get there?
I think that's important because the issue with cryptocurrencies now is that they're so volatile. So, there's no incentive to spend it because it's going to go to the moon next week. The other issue is scalability. Right now Bitcoin and Ethereum only supports 10 transactions per second. I think that's less than what Starbucks do on a daily basis. So right now it's not good enough to be a payment system. But I think in the future, there's two directions we can go. One, we need some mechanism for some stable coin in a sense. So that's what DAI's trying to do, or let's not say Tether. Tether's not a great stable coin. Don't get Tether.
USDC.
Yeah. But I think we need some stable value there before it can be used for payments. In terms of scaling, that's most of my research at the moment. So the way I'm trying to approach that is, can we scale the network while still holding on to that accountability property? In cryptocurrencies, there's these special users called miners that maintain the blockchain. The whole point of cryptocurrencies is to make sure they don't cheat. They don't create money, they don't create fake transactions. So how can we keep them accountable while scaling the network? And I think the most promising way is an off-chain approach, where we can do payments locally, then we just settle on the blockchain. So we can do 1,000 payments back and forth, and then the final result, we just send that to the network. That's what I envision it for the future, but I don't know. It's only 10 years old, we have no idea how this will evolve.
Yeah, does anyone else from the panel like to answer that one? Oh.
I wanted to add two things. Sidechains is also an interesting concept of transacting. But in terms of the mass adoption, I think one of the kind of interesting realizations I had when I started looking at Bitcoin was that actually banks today don't really settle that fast either. Like Visa takes 72 hours to settle a transaction. It's just that they have a so-called transaction spot crediting, which means that they introduce they give you a credit, or they believe that you have the money, so they settle the transaction, and then 72 hours later they actually get the money. And I think once banks and financial industry embraces that concept and starts doing that for cryptocurrencies, that will solve most of the problems in terms of speed.
Does anyone else on the panel like to?
Oh, sorry.
No? Okay, back to the audience. Okay, and would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Paul. I'm head of blockchain for Elemental Concept, and soon to be a principal engineer for Blockchain Technology Partners. Okay, one of the things I'm skeptical about cryptocurrency is that at the moment, cryptocurrency value is still, benchmarked against fiat currency, so to speak. So is there a point in time where cryptocurrency can become a value of its own, where if it doesn't, then I don't see any point in cryptocurrency being a medium of exchange, really. Plus, I've seen cryptocurrency that wasn't in blockchain, it was called Linden Dollar. So I don't see really cryptocurrency bringing anything new, to be honest.
I got one quick comment before because I've got the mic already. What's quite interesting is that when you go to trade crypto, maybe the biggest thing we're going to get out of this experiment is we all know how the market works, how currencies have value, that we day trade. But actually, most of the exchanges use BTC as the default, value for trading. So Bitcoin is being used as a medium of exchange, and you actually price it in BTC when you trade with ETH. So we are seeing that in the trading world, just not in the real world.
I'd like to add something to that, personally. I ran some events last year in Hong Kong, and all the quotes I got for event spaces were in Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah, so maybe it's just not a UK thing, but maybe there are some places that are really valuing it. I don't know about right this second.
Yeah. Well, I think that the other, what do we want to do? Do we want to use cryptocurrency on daily basis as, you go to a shop and you pay with Bitcoin? That's one thing. But Bitcoin offers a very interesting reference value. Transacting between countries, between geographies, between currencies, it gives you that kind of stable coin in a way where we can all go back to. And also welcome to Blockchain Technology Partners.
Before we go back to Paul, let's get Tina in.
So, fiat money, so for non-crypto traditionalists in the room, is your dollar, your euro. You believe that has value because somebody tells you it has value. So there isn't, our fiat money used to be based on the gold standard. You've heard that. Before that, there was a silver standard. And it's not based on anything anymore. So that is a paradigm shift in the way we decide what value is. We used to trade with chickens. So, you know, if I show up and I say, look, I've got 3 chickens, you know, are you going to give me a tent to camp in? And you go, yeah, that's a good deal. So, you know, the chickens used to have value. So I think it depends on what you consider value. And then I also think that there is the cryptographic currency, and then there is the tokenization of fiat money, which is another way that we could digitize that transactional process. And then there is, you know, the tokenization of assets in a way. So going back to stablecoins, it might be that a basket of assets says that this is what that value equates to. So I think you have to back up and ask yourself, why do we believe that the dollar is worth whatever the dollar is worth? And I think the answer to that today is that's how you pay your taxes, right? So until we can kind of pay our taxes in Bitcoin, and you know there's a state in the US where you can, then we'll start to see that shift.
Thank you, Dina. Right, who's next?
Here?
Yeah, I'm just, it's quite far.
You're on this side.
Hi. Yes, so I've done the code club in my local primary school for the last couple of years, and I've noticed the increase in participants that are girls. And I'm just wondering if there's anything that you guys could suggest that would maybe encourage that. Thank you.
I think if you're talking about doing things in schools, absolutely. There are things that parents and teachers can do to encourage everyone to do coding, not just girls. But from an earlier age, so that it's not a scary topic. And
so we're dealing with 9-10-year-olds.
yeah. So I think by the age of 9 or 10, girls and boys already have some idea that they should be doing different things. Society tells them that, you know, they should wear different things. Coding's more of a boy thing. So absolutely the messaging should be there from a younger age. But I don't think it should be limited to women, girls. I think that boys should also be educated that it isn't just a boys' club. You know, it's an inclusive workplace now.
Thanks, Ali. And Marta?
Yeah, so, well, obviously you're doing something okay, so since you're getting more and more girls, so maybe we should ask you that question. I think that there has been recently, it was on one of the American news stations, 60-minute, the 60-minute show talked about how there is a massive drop in sciences and programming after secondary school. That seems where it, you know, people, and I see that also, people get kind of ashamed, or girls get ashamed of trying to be into sciences, and it takes a big leap of faith to be like, okay, I'm going to take triple science, I'm going to be passionate about that. I think the other interesting perspective is I work a lot with Dubai and the Middle East. Actually, most of computer science university or degrees at universities there are like 70-80% women. Yeah. One of the best computer security schools is run by a woman, and it's like she has mostly women. Actually, it's also fair enough, most men go abroad to study, so you're left with just women. But they do learn, and they are very passionate about it. If you go to Saudi Arabia, a lot of women, or United Emirates, a lot of women code. So I think it is a bit about the messaging, encouragement, and just not, you know, when I started coding, there was my first year of university. I never touched code before I went to the university. The first or second lesson or class, my professor noticed that something was not working for me. I asked him for help. He touched the computer, it magically started working. One of the stupid glitches of computers. He turned around to me and said, well, I guess computers don't like you. But don't worry, computers in general have problems with women. I'm like, really? So we need to change that kind of thinking.
Be fired.
Okay, and back to the audience. Come on, guys, girls.
Actually, I have a question for you. My name is Ravi, and I'm a software developer doing the full stack testing, parallel, front-end, back-end, and middleware testing as well. And one of your slides, you did mention like the most of the startup experiments, 90% failure in the blockchain technology. Can you give more insights on to that? Because so many startups where I'm getting offers are dealing with the blockchain. It's kind of curious to know. Also, it's kind of skeptical. Should I take this offer? Why does the failure? Like it's 90%. It's quite high. Why does it happen?
So that's a good question. It's a study by Forrester, I guess. They did that study. I think that big part of it is that there are blockchain applications and blockchain applications. So the 90% rate is very kind of increased by the fact that almost every enterprise that you talked to in the past 3 years had a blockchain POC or probably 5 blockchain POCs. It was just in fashion to have a blockchain POC. So if you're Deloitte or your, well, not IBM, but your whatever, EY, right, decides that we're going to go blockchain and they do like 5 different blockchain projects, they will naturally not exist anymore in 3 years' time because they are aimed to be a POC. They are not aimed to be moved to production. So that's one thing. The other thing is that building a POC is very different to having a production version. And a lot of those startups, and that's something that you basically have to evaluate for yourself, are not something that will ever become a product. And that kind of, you can see it sometimes from the business model, and you have to ask the right questions of, how far is your funding, what is your leeway, and how do you plan to move that into production? Because something that, if you take, sorry, it'll be 2 more minutes. If you take a design of, say, a supply chain, right? In the POC version, it's extremely easy to build because you have like 3 nodes and 2 partners and it all runs very well and you have a supply chain, great. Now try moving that to production. Get all of the parties in that supply chain to sign up, including the tax offices, including the customs and everything else, to participate in that supply chain and scale that. That's really hard. If you take, for instance, an identity system, building a POC for an identity system is extremely hard because you have all of those parts of how do you actually define what identity is and so on and so forth. But try having a good POC, scaling that up, that's fairly simple because everybody are kind of inclined to have that. So always, yeah, it depends on the project.
I think another issue is misconception. Blockchains is a really buzzy word and everyone gets really excited that it's going to save the world and then it doesn't do what they want it to do.
Or they don't need it in the first place.
And they don't need it in the first place, so that's probably a good reason why there's a high failure rate. Because most people think it's going to do X, then it does Y. Then they're like, oh no, we just burnt our money. So, that would be my intuition.
I think the elephant in the room is that a lot of those projects never intended to deliver anything anyway. So, I mean, I hate to say it, but there is a lot of those failures where maybe capital was raised with the intention to do something, or one had a great idea, and this is not necessarily a crypto thing. If we go back to 1998, 2000. This all happened before, right? When we had the .com boom and people had a great idea and they went off and got, 20 million in VC money and then, people didn't want dog food delivered to their house, right? So I think it's probably a mixture of all 3 of those things, but there were a number of projects that didn't need a blockchain in the first place, never intended to deliver anything, it was used as a capital raise, I think it's a mixture.
Yeah, and just to add into that as well, if anyone is thinking about working for a blockchain company and they want to speak to somebody that has done quite a lot of due diligence on quite a lot of different blockchain projects, please come and speak to me, because I have also met people that have been in projects and are no longer in projects, and that's not because of that. Okay, so I can at least share with you the things to avoid. So please do feel free to come speak to me about that.
And just to kind of also add to what you were saying, way too easy today to found a company, start a company, and basically I've spent some time in Silicon Valley, and you know, after 3 sentences you'll get to, so what is your next startup? And then there is this whole, I have a word for it or a phrase for it, it's Silicon Valley startup. It's a startup that makes total sense if you don't move from Silicon Valley. It's like, yes, of course you would want someone to come into your house and pick up your dirty laundry and then pack it into a bag, wash it and put it away into your shelves because you're too busy smoking weed and coding. That makes total sense if you're there. Move anywhere else, nobody will pay $50 for that, right? So it's the same with blockchain. It's just like if you're in that bubble and you're sitting all day thinking, I have this hammer, which window should I break? At some point you'll find a window. It might just be, you know, the police station window. That's kind of dumb.
So in conclusion, it's not even just blockchain. It's all
No,
startups.
I think it's startups and
Yeah.
scalability.
Yeah. All
So I think one of the things I see a lot, and this is when I would take you up on your offer, if you've got a great idea and it works in one place, and look at the founding team, are these people that know how to scale a business, right? So a proof of concept is one thing, but growing a business that is going to be sustainable and have a proper board of directors and proper advisors, that's not easy.
So do your due diligence not just on the project, but on the people too. And if you want real understanding of what they're doing, visit Reddit, because people love doing research on Reddit. So that concludes our evening today, here at WeWork anyway. Please join us at the Banker for further networking and drinks, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you.